Good morning and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I am live at home. We are still in the midst of the pandemic, and so we are still social distancing. So we are filming live via remote. And in studio at her home is Phette Hollins. She is an author. She is a inspiration because she has a series called Getting Naked, where she helps people heal from their trauma. And so she's going to talk to us a lot about that today. And so we're going to talk about healing. Good morning, Phette. How are you?
Good morning, Kim. I am doing great on this Cinco de Mayo that we got to spend indoors.
I know, right?
I feel like I went anywhere anyway, but still.
Yes, exactly. So how are you faring during all of this COVID-19 pandemic quarantine time that we're in?
I'm doing a little better because initially I was working at a nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really heavy there, and listening to the people who were the staff that were getting infected, and then some of the patients becoming infected. I ended up leaving because I just couldn't deal with it. I was not in what you would consider as essential. I was just doing temp, part-time clerical work there. It was overwhelming for me. But and my daughter is a nurse, so she thought that she was infected. So then that was a big thing to deal with. So now I'm doing okay. And but for the most part, I was already practicing social distancing because, I'm like an outgoing introvert. I go out and socialize for a little bit, but then I retreat and, be with myself and into myself for the most part. So I'm okay now. It seems like the news is kind of dying down as far as people that I know who are losing people. So that part is heavy. So I just give myself a break on social media, but okay for the most part.
I'm glad to hear that. You talked about it being heavy, and my husband is a essential worker. He works in a hospital too. And so I know the stories that you hear are heavy, which is a great segue for our topic this morning, because you have a series called Getting Naked. What is Getting Naked?
Getting Naked is a movement that I created in 2015 to just basically provoke vulnerable storytelling, because I started realizing that people were coming to me sharing their stories, but they were not open with them. You know what I mean? It was more so just like they were venting to me, or wanting to share their stories with me, but not sharing it with anyone else. They were ashamed of their stories. So I just really created this movement to provoke storytelling, and it's in essence removing the layers of baggage that's holding us back and keeping us stuck. And it's just getting to the core of our issues, because I just think it's important that we talk about those things, because sharing our stories is healing. You know what I mean? Healing connects us. So it was mainly just to create a dialogue, because I was getting so many stories, so many people coming to me, telling me their stories. So many people are unhappy. So I just wanted to create this platform. But so initially it was more so about being open and honest in relationships, because that was the bulk of the stories that I was getting. People who were unhappily married, or unhappy in their long-term relationships, just unhappy with their life period. And I wanted to create space for that, because at the time I had been divorced for about 2 years, and I was really like open about bits and pieces of my story, so people resonated with that. But what I found was that though people resonated with it, they didn't want to be honest about their story. So initially that's what I started Get Naked for, was because when I'm most vulnerable when we're naked. It was just a play on words. And I knew that it would draw people's attention in. They're like, get naked, what is that? So initially it was supposed to be about being unhappy in your marriage, your relationship, how, stuff like that. But I could not find anybody who was willing to talk openly about that. Mm-hmm. So then it kind of went into this, okay, just get naked about anything that you've healed from, are in the midst of dealing with, just to share the story and see if it resonates with people. So that it gravitated to that. But initially it was for relationships because so many people were sharing their relationship woes with me.
Which is a great thing because that's how we met, because I shared my story with you and you were like, Kim, come down to Eastern Market and tell your story. And I remember like, what? I got to come down to Eastern Market, and I got a chance to meet you, and I got a chance to meet Kelly Green, who we talked to earlier in our podcast series. We were talking about male depression, and we had a great conversation on that. When we talk about being vulnerable, why do you think it's so difficult for people to be vulnerable? Because you're talking about vulnerable storytelling. And I think in essence, that's sort of what storytelling is. But you said both of them together and you're emphasizing it. So I'm wondering, what are you drawing more from that than maybe what we actually see on the surface?
When I say vulnerable, I mean being genuine, authentic. Mm-hmm. I'm finding that people will tell stories, but most of the time their story is like a story. So I say vulnerable intentionally because of the fact that I would see people will come to me with their for real vulnerable stories, and then I will watch them on social media, or if I knew them personally, I will watch how they interact with people, and it would be a totally different story. Do you know what I mean? So by vulnerable, I mean really being authentic, really being real, really being honest. And I think people aren't vulnerable because they're ashamed. A lot of people are ashamed of, and it's for different reasons. Ashamed of their story, they feel guilty. It could be from a slew of things: their upbringing, the morals, religion. It's a bunch. We can go down a rabbit hole with that. But for the most part, people are ashamed. They don't want to be judged. They want to keep up appearances. There are just a lot of reasons why people aren't, which is why I had a hard time finding people to share about being unhappy. And it's the whole dynamic that goes to that too. So yeah, that's why I'm using them together to say vulnerable storytelling, because people will tell stories all day long, but I needed people to be vulnerable and not be ashamed of their story, to know that their story matters, and for them not to be ashamed of it.
And you hit it on the head. Their story matters. Be genuine, be authentic in you, because it's like what we say as Christians. We always say you can't have a testimony without a test. And so that's your story. And so I totally get exactly what you're saying, because as authors, people always come up to us and say, oh, I got this great idea for you and you should write it. And then they tell you the story and you're like, okay, it sounds good. Well, why don't you write it? No, I'm not the writer. You're the writer. You should write it. But right. Which is always interesting, in that the different ideas that people come up with, and they always leave things out, or they don't understand all the components that you need to have in a story. But you have taken your series, so it's not just a video presentation, or because you have a movie I saw on, is it BET?
The movie, no, it was on this, it was on the Jam Network.
Okay. So yeah. You have a movie. You do have a movie. So you are a screenwriter with a actual movie that you've done. And then you've taken the Getting Naked series and you've elevated it, correct?
That's correct. I'm bringing it back. Yes.
Okay. And you have a play, some books that are coming out of it or have come out of it?
Out of Get Naked or just period?
Getting Naked. Getting Naked.
Getting Naked play is That's okay. So that was when I was supposed to get with you. I remember that.
Right. Yes.
So
Okay. So we're putting it out on Facebook.
listen. So yes, I do have a Get Naked play. It's not complete. It's not complete because I'm not a playwright. So that's
I am.
That's a new lane for me. But I did create, and initially it was supposed to be a play. Then I took pieces from that and made it a short, because I actually have a short film from Get Naked too.
Okay.
But yes, it's a lot of different elements to Get Naked, because I really think it's important for us to be honest and open about our stories, because it relieves, it lifts this weight off of us. Do you know what I mean? And you can't make a person tell their story publicly. They have to understand that when they do so, it's freeing to not be living in a lie anymore. So yeah, that's all I could do, is just create the space, and the people will come, like how I met you and you got open and honest about postpartum depression, because that's serious too. And not a lot of people talk about that. Well, not a lot of people I know talk about that. So.
Absolutely. And I learned that too. That's not a story that we like to share with people, because, when you become a mom, instantly rainbows and all these wonderful feelings of love, and you're supposed to feel accomplished and at peace because you're a mom now. And sometimes when that doesn't happen, society and people that are close to you are like, what? You don't feel like that? What's wrong with you? There's something wrong with you. And I remember we talked about that, of feeling like there was something wrong with me. And in essence, when I went to therapy, the therapist said to me, you're exhausted. You're a mom. You're okay to feel what you feel. And so he allowed me to be genuine and authentic in my feelings and to embrace them, but to release them. So I wasn't holding on to them, because that was what was wearing me down.
Right.
But I saw, and I haven't had a chance to watch it, and I promise I am going to watch it before the end of the week. You had this story about a mother. Is it of a murdered child?
Oh.
Is that the latest one?
It was, so yes. These were recorded around the time when you did yours as well. That's what I mean by I'm revamping them. So I had to go back in and I edited them because I'm bringing the series back. But yes, it's about a mother who, she shares her story about how she became this meditation doula because of having to deal with the fact that her newborn was murdered.
Wow.
And yeah, I still get chills hearing that story, because I cannot imagine. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, her daughter was 6 months old and she was murdered by the father.
That's horrible.
So it's very, very horrible. So there's a video up now. I've been posting clips just to get people's interest peaked, but the full video is on the Get Naked page. So I've been tagging people in that, because people have been really, that really got people's attention. Like, where's the full interview? So I would tag people in it just recently, even though that came out, I recorded that like 2 years ago.
Wow.
So I'm getting people
powerful
an idea of what Get Naked is about, because yeah, that's a powerful story.
But it speaks to your gift of getting people to share. It speaks to the blessing of the platform and the movement that you've created, where you've given people space to share and to say the things that they need so that they can have healing and they can help heal others. I mean, we hear stories now, which it seems more commonplace. It's not, but where you have children who were abducted from a hospital as an infant, they were raised by somebody else, not their parent, and now they're grown up and found out that, they were stolen from somebody else, and the parents been looking for them, for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, whatever it is, and now find out that who they thought they were, they weren't. So, there are so many stories, I'm sure.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
I cannot. imagine. Do you know? I just cannot.
I can't either. I can't. And I'll tell you really quick. When both of my sons were born, I had C-sections. So this is me being transparent. I had C-sections, so I was heavily drugged. And I remember my husband, both times, we talked about it before we went in the hospital. And I said, listen, I will be fine. I need you to stay with the boys. Whichever, Miles was first, Aiden was second. And each one, I was like, go with the baby. Go with the baby. Don't let the baby out of your. I was obsessed with that because I was like, nobody is switching my baby. I'm like, you take care of the baby because they are the vulnerable ones. I'll be okay. So I understand.
I never thought about that. It's just, that's something you see on Lifetime movies. I just thought
exactly.
that was Lifetime movie stuff.
Right. So where do you see Getting Naked going? I know you talked about a play, and then tell us about your short film that you have.
For Getting Naked, or just the short film that's on?
Well, tell us first where you see Getting Naked going. Where would you like it to go?
Oh, wow. I would like Get Naked to really be a big platform. Like, when I think of stuff, I think of it on the level of Oprah, because I had a difficult time trying to define what it is that I do. So I know that Oprah, of course, she was the talk show host, but she was more than that. Do you know what I mean? She was, when you look her up, she's considered like this media mogul. So she just used her talk show as a platform. So I just really I want Get Naked, I want to use it as a platform for people to be more open about their storytelling. So I see it big time. Like, I have a production like what you have here going on, that I won't have to go out and look for the guests and schedule the guests and do the graphics and set up. I wouldn't have to do any of that. That would be in the hands of a production team. So I see it being a big scale like that, because I think that while we're in this quarantine, and everyone is doing like video, chatting, and more, not just for fun, but business wise, that it is creating another avenue for storytelling. So that people will start connecting and resonating with other people's stories and saying, hey, I see myself in that person, and getting open and getting naked. So I see it being big, like Oprah having big guests. And also, I'm going to always be creating something. So not because of my my production company, I'm always coming up with different ideas. So there will be different avenues of storytelling, different types of storytelling. Do you know what I mean? So I see it on that scale, being Oprah-like, just having people on to be vulnerable and share their stories. Because I know, watching her show, her was it Super Soul, Sunday Sessions, all of that stuff helped me. Her and Iyanla is the one who helped me through these 7 years when I was going through, even though I started Getting Naked 5 years ago. But prior to that, I was looking at Oprah and Iyanla, and they're the ones who convinced me inspired me to be vulnerable. That's where I get the whole vulnerable thing from, because I was so amazed at how transparent Iyanla was when I read Piece from Broken Pieces. So that kind of, I said, she went through all of this, I could share my story, and I know how this is helping me. So I see it being on that level. People will know what Get Naked is. People will be excited to get naked because they know that it's not their story. Our stories don't belong to us. They don't. And people misinterpret that to mean like, oh, I don't want people in my business and all of that. It's like, you can pick and choose what you share, but if it's something that if it's a story in you that needs to be shared, do you know what I mean? Because your intuition will tell you this needs to be told. Somebody needs to heal from this. You need to heal from this. So I see it being a big deal. just to answer the question. And I see it being a big deal. And as far as the movie, did you want to know about the Get Naked movie or the movie that's on the Jam Network?
So we're going to talk about both of those, but I want to take a break. We're going to come right back to the Kim B. Davis Show. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Kim B. Davis Show. We are talking with author Phette Hollins this morning. She's talking to us about the Get Naked movement. So we were just talking about your Get Naked, or we were about to talk about your Get Naked film. Tell us about that.
It's a short. It's like 7 minutes.
It's a film. Be proud of it.
No, I am very proud of it because that was the first film that made it to completion, because prior to that, I worked on a feature film and this guy stole my footage, but that's a whole nother story.
Oh.
So I am proud of it. But Get Naked is it's just a small piece taken from the play. And it's mainly about me sharing my story about how I was this, let me see, because I did this, a few years ago too. Let me remember.
Okay.
So I took this Get Naked piece, because a lot of the stuff that I write about is about my life. That's how this whole thing started. So when I started being vulnerable and sharing my story, people were coming to me like, oh my God, that happened to me. So it's actually called Daddy's Girl is a Hoe. That's what it's called. Mm-hmm. And just mainly saying that this young girl who had abandonment issues. She had abandonment issues. So that showed up in her life and in her relationships and in her mate choices. So it was just it's like a poetic piece. It has, do you know Rosemary Wilson?
Mm-mm. She sounds familiar.
Yeah, she's really big on the poetry scene. Very dynamic speaker, poet, but she plays the role of supposed to be me in the little Get Naked Daddy's Girl is a Hoe thing. So it's mainly about a girl who is trying to have this relationship with this guy, but they both have their own baggage and their issues, so the relationship doesn't work. And just this little piece about how the dad was absent my dad was absent out of my life. He was just in and out. And my mom, she was present physically, but she was emotionally unavailable. So I just have these abandonment issues, and it was showing up in my relationship. So that's in essence what it's about, with some little comedy in it. So Kelly is in it, and as well as Kai.
Awesome. So
it's 7 minutes long. It's not graphic, even though it's called Daddy's Girl is a Hoe. It's not graphic.
I got you. But the title is powerful because it's two opposing ideals. When you say daddy's girl has implications of, oh, this is the good girl. This is a daddy's girl. She always listens to her daddy, and then when you give the utterance of a hoe, well, we have this whole other thought process about what that is, about what her upbringing was, the things that she probably did wrong in life to end up in those circumstances. But what I think is powerful is that you recognize that when people have abandonment issues, that certain behaviors will come out of that. And we just had a powerful podcast a couple weeks ago with someone who was talking about emotional responses to love. And we were talking about being vulnerable and why it's so important, and when people don't, why they act the way that they do.
Yep. So you get it. That's exactly, that was exactly the reason why I named it that. So you get it. You get it. You on it. So yeah, that's exactly right.
So tell us about the other movie that I saw that I was so excited for you.
Thank you. The other movie is called 7 Whole Days. It's about a young couple who decide to get tested together for HIV, and one of them tests positive.
Oh.
And so, right. So while this is not my story, it is someone's story.
Mm-hmm.
So the original idea was going to be a middle-aged couple.
Okay.
Because that's initially that was the real story.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this middle-aged couple who had been together for 10 years, and one of them tested positive, but the other one was negative.
Okay.
And instead of them separating, they stayed together. So I thought it was a beautiful love story, which then that's, I made it, I really don't want to give it away, but I made it in the way of like a love story because that's not people's immediate reaction. When I posted it, I did a poll saying, what if you found out that your mate was positive? What would you do? And everybody was like, I would leave. A lot of people said they would leave. And I said, this is after 10 years, not exaggerating, they were together for 10 years and then found out one of them was positive. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to share the story because I thought that it would do a good representation of what love, like that's love. Because I don't know what I would do either, but I thought that was a good representation of love. So I sat on the idea for a few years, and then I finally wrote it and made it a young couple to, to relate to like to millennials. Mm-hmm. But right before I decided to change it from middle-aged couple to millennials, someone reached out to me, said somebody wanted to share a story with you because that's what people do. Just say, yeah, oh, I'm a human vault, like for real. I've been dubbed the human vault. So then I get this person calls me. This is a couple. So I knew the guy in the relationship, but I did not know the girl. And he's like, my girlfriend wants to talk to you. I'm like, about what? So long story short, because even though I write short stories, I really don't know how to make long stories short. But long story short, she shared with me that she was HIV positive. And so she was probably not even 30. So she shared her story about being HIV positive, but she was HIV positive at birth. Her mom was a drug addict. And so how she met the guy that she was with, and they ended up having a child, and the child was negative. So she just ended up telling me their story, and I said, this is proof right here. I need to do this. You know what I mean? So that gave me the fuel to say, right, just do the story, make them a millennial couple so that they can resonate with them. Because, again, this is something that nobody is talking about. Nobody wants to talk about HIV and getting tested and all of that. So that's what that one is about. And it was received really, really well. And I thought that was a good thing.
That is an awesome story, Phette. See, this is what happens when you operate in your gifts. And like you said, you're like a magnet for stories, and people want you to tell their story. That's a blessing, because this young woman had probably struggled with the stereotype of what being HIV positive looks like, instead of people actually asking her, what is your story? Because to be born with HIV, that has to be a totally different experience than someone who received it through a transmission, through drugs or something like that. This was something that was due to no fault of her own.
Right. So yeah, that's why I thought that had a whole another set of like wow moments to me. Like I can't imagine that either. So that's why I said I think it's a blessing that people do see me as the one to be the keeper of stories. And that's when it became I needed to do something with the stories. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? So I have been sitting all this time, like, I don't know what to do with these stories, but they need to be shared, because even though the people aren't, they don't feel comfortable enough sharing the story. They want the story shared. Do you know what I mean? They're like, here, can you share this story? I'm like, what do you want me to do with this? I gotta write a script, hire a whole crew. I gotta, you know what I mean? So it's a lot of stories, but I do find that they need to be told.
So I want to go back to something really quick. And you were talking about being vulnerable and being authentic. And I think it's important when people share their stories because it dispels the strong Black woman myth. You know, we live in a society where we like to say it all the time. I'm a strong Black woman. I can do whatever. And you were talking about in therapy, you know, go talk to somebody, go get the help that you need because everybody needs help. You know, no one should have to suffer alone.
Okay, it froze. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. What was the question though?
No, I was just saying, what do you think about the strong Black woman myth?
I think it's just that. I think it's a myth. I think it's unfortunate because we are supposed to be ones that like to have it together. We're supposed to keep it together. You know what I mean? And I think it does more damage than it does good. Because like you said, we do well, a lot of us do. I don't anymore, but hold that independent women. Nope, it's like I don't know if I want to. Let me see. I don't wear that label saying, well, I'm this independent Black woman because of the connotation that it has now, because it's indicative of me not needing anybody. Excuse me not needing any help. And that's totally not true, but I did operate in that for a while because I have a 26-year-old and I have a 13-year-old. But with my 26-year-old, her father, you know, that's the whole generational stuff. I'm not about to get into that. Her father was in and out of the picture as well. So I was this strong Black woman, single mother, taking care of this child. So it comes with the whole set of behaviors and all that as well. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so my 13-year-old, her father is in the picture, has been in the picture. So I had to look at things totally different. Like, he's like, you don't have to do this by yourself because we have this mindset like we can handle it, we can do it. I'm just like, hey, I can handle this. You know, if you don't want to be in the picture, it's fine. So I think it does a lot more damage than it does good. And as far as talking to someone, I think that's very beneficial. I urge anybody to talk to a therapist or talk to somebody that they trust, but really, you know, a therapist, because they can really be objective and they don't have anything vested in the relationship. So they can really be unbiased. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just don't agree with that whole independent. Yeah, it's good that if you know, you got your make money, you know how to rake some leaves and shovel snow, that is great. But I do not advocate saying like, oh, I can do those things. I still say I need help or XYZ. So I think that's important to say you need help, because no one can do anything by themselves on their own. It's just too much.
Absolutely. Phette, our time is quickly going fast. I want to let people know where they can find you, how to find your films. Can you share that with us before we go?
Yes. To keep up with me, blogs, all that stuff, you can go to PhetteHollins.com. Do you want me to spell it out or?
Yes, please.
Okay. So PhetteHollins.com, PhetteHollins.com. You can find me on Facebook under Phette Hollins. I'm on Instagram under Phette Writes. And 7 Whole Days, well, both of them actually, 7 Whole Days and Daddy's Girl is a Hoe is on my YouTube channel. and that's under Phette Hollins as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phette, for joining us today. We got to have you back on so we can have another conversation about being vulnerable and dispelling the strong Black woman's myth. But you have just been watching the Kim B. Davis Show. Thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you on the next session. And remember, be magnificent.